Hey folks, today we're driving into the ReactJS by building something practical and fun, a habit tracker. This app will actually help you keep track of your daily habits with the streak counters and motivational twist. This project is a beginner friendly and will teach you ReactJS step by step. By the end, you'll have a functional app and a strong foundation in React. Let's get started. So first of all, setting up the environment. I myself, as you can see, we'll be using Windows 11, VS Code, and Vite. Vite is a fast development tool that works great with React. So first of all, if you need to download VS Code, just go to the VS Code and Google that. You'll get the first link, go here and just download the VS Code version for yourself. For me, it's a Windows, but you can get any other platform if you want. For the Vite, I would go vite.dev or just Google Vite and go to the getting started, and here you will get instructions how to start with a Vite project. That's pretty much all the instruction you need to know. We will do it with myself here. So we will start clean with a VS Code. To get a terminal window, which I do have underneath over here, you just go view in the menu of the VS Code and hit terminal. You'll get terminal. In Windows, I use PowerShell. In Linux or macOS, it will be git bash. That's pretty much it. So it's two windows here in the VS Code and here in the terminal. So let's click on the terminal and let's do this. That's right, npm create Vite latest. Let's call it habit tracker dash template React, because we want to do a actual template for the React, and hit enter. Let's wait for the installation. Proceed. You want to install Vite? Yes. Okay, tag remove existing files and continue, ignore files and continue. That's because I had this folder on my own. Let's just increase the window. Okay, what do we want to choose? I suggest you here to use React, since we'll be working with React, and here just use JavaScript for the simplicity. Done. Okay, so as suggested, let's check the name of the folder. Whoops, that's way too much. As it was suggested, just cd habit tracker habit. I just pressed tab, so it's autofills the name. You can do habit tracker, and if you hit tab, it's just like after suggesting the name, and at the beginning dot means just like a current directory. So now we are inside. What was the next being suggested is npm install and then npm run dev, which is pretty standard for npm environment. Let's go to npm install. Now we're getting installed. All dependencies for the project is needed. So this has been done and successfully. Now we do npm run dev. So we are starting our local development server. So now it's been started. You can see it as a status underneath. It says Vite's been ready. Just copy this address in your browser, have it on the right, and hit enter. This is, by the way, your Vite local server for the development. You can even click the counter, so you actually know it's working and it's all good. I would do right click and inspect. So that's one of way to run the console underneath, and click this menu and get from elements where you were to the console, so you can troubleshoot the console. This is a button for the clearing the status underneath, so it's cleared out. In case we get any errors, we'll see it here in case we ever need it. Okay, let's go back to we can, I think, close terminal window for a while. We don't need that for sure. Okay, now, as you can see, for the folder, we have a lot of stuff being installed. But the good thing is our server is running and it's all good over here. The only folder dissolved, ignore that. That's I've created. The rest you should have exactly the same. That's like basically a structure, default structure of the project. Okay, this is our basically starting point. Next step would be cleaning up the default project. Yeah, let's clean up the default files provided by the Vite to start with a blank canvas. So go to the source, go to the app CSS. This is all predefined files, and just basically delete app CSS. Don't be afraid to delete that, that's okay. And let's go to the assets and delete the assets as well. Maybe not the assets, but just logo itself. Click on the React logo and delete that. That's fine. That's just like saying cannot find file anymore, and it after refreshes whatever we do here and save it, it will after refresh the result. And let's go to the main file, which will be app.jsx. Let's double click that. We can close that part of the window for a while, and we basically can remove almost everything. Just leave function app. Let's remove that line. Let's leave a return statement. Maybe everything from here to here. Let's leave it return only, and let's open the div, and inside div put h1. Let's call it habit tracker. Control S, sorry, for the saving the file, and we get the habit tracker. Let me just zoom out a bit so we can have a bit better view. Okay, we're good here. How big this is? Big enough. Okay, now we have some beginning, which is good, but our project is cleaned up and we are ready to start building. Next step, building the UI structure. So let's begin by building the basic UI for our habit tracker. We'll create a simple layout with a header, a form to add habits, and a list to display them. Let's go one by one. So we're still with the app GS6, and let's start with the importing. So let's just move out a little bit down our function, which is basically, by the way, the function is a component and its file, its main file. This file will be later on imported to main file, which in itself, as you can see, this is the component app, which on its own main J6 later on imported to index.html, which is initial starting point over here, which then will be started. So that's sort of like a chain of the files. Starts with index.html, goes to the main starts app, and here will be our main logic. So let's go back again to what are we doing here. Let's import useState from React. We'll be using state. useState is a hook, and it controls state of your component locally, and will be very useful. You will see what is it for in a moment. Let's write const. So we'll be using useState, and we'll be using to saving our data, specifically habits, and another one will be set habits. This is a function. So first one, this is the value, which will be having all our habits inside, and that will be a set function, which will be setting and updating our values, which will end up in this file at the end of. I'm not trying to overwhelm you, so I'll be trying to going forward as simple as possible. So we're running this useState, which we imported from React. This is a built-in library. We actually initiating function of the useState. Inside, I just put an empty array. You can basically start as an empty, but I'm just starting with an empty. So our initial habits variable will just contain just empty array. We use array to have, let's say, a list of items of something we want to track. And for our example, it will be a list of habits, or just array of habits. We'll call it array of habits, and we use set habits to set those habits inside of this array one by one. And we will use another state, so let's say another value, and we'll call it new habit. We'll explain why we're doing that in a moment. It's called set new habit. We will use same useState as we used before, and in here it will be just one habit, and initial value will set empty string. It's basically string. Usually it's something like habit number 1, but it will be just empty because it's just an initializing, so it's the very beginning. Saving that, and first of all we will go with adding first new habit. We will go and add function which will be responsible to add new habits. Let's call it by const. So it's a constant add habit. We're opening an arrow function right now, and let's do if statement. If new habit, and we will right away do trim. So trim, it's another method which basically trims all strings. Let's imagine we have a string called like habit1 and some spaces after. It will just basically trim all the spaces within that string. So it returns a string without extra spaces at the beginning and in the end. So let's imagine we're getting a new habit. We trimmed it for the spaces because we don't need extra spaces. And if it's not empty, so this is equality. So if it's equal, and this sign responsible for saying not, so it reverts anything. So if it's not an empty string, that's our if statement. What we will do next, we will do something like we will use set habits. If you remember, we had set habits for many habits and set habit for the single habit. We'll do set habits, which are many, and it will get clear soon. If it's looks a bit unclear for now, we'll use habits, which we had the value before, and we will add name, which will be, that's by the way a structure of a habit, a new habit. Strict will be a set new habit, which will be an empty one. Gets clear soon, I promise. So let's update. So now we have this saying, which is add habit is initiated but never used. That's fine. And let's go and update our return statement. So in React, we have this component, which is imports something. This is like a body of the component. And then we do export this component. And in terms of the structure, we always have a logic over here. We usually initiate some constants. This is also a constant, which is a function on its own. And then we return something. And in return, it's basically something like HTML structure. This is basically called GSX. This is basically what we end up with, like this one, habit tracker for now. So let's do a bit of styling, probably add some div on the outside of current div, and let's do some style. For the sake of the simplicity, we will do inline styling, and we will use a lot of like HTML elements like div, buttons, and h1, but that's not an ideal of the way of the styling. But as I said, for the simplicity, we will do some inline styling, do some padding, set up some font family, which is not critical, but let's do that anyway. So by setting up a font, we'll set up two fonts. One will be first one and another will be sort of like a backup font. So we have Arial as a main font, and we have sans serif, which is a failback, so it's like a backup in case there will be no Arial, which is kind of like a rare case in my opinion. But anyway, so we have so far our div. By the way, this is extra div. Let's just remove this div and this div underneath. I think I just did extra. So we have h1 at the top, we have div, we did a little bit of styling, we can save that. We don't see anything so far, which is fine. There's not much we've changed. I think we will do with the input value. Yes, so input is a HTML component which is built in HTML. This is not something like coming from React or JavaScript. What input allows us to add some values, and if I'm closing tag by this, I can do basically something like input, but since we don't need to put anything in between those tags, we can do a self-closing tag. So input accepts several parameters, arguments. I think it would be correct to say arguments. You look at set type of, and as you can see, VS Code like suggesting me what we can set up. And actually we need a text because the input will be accepting a text. We can set up a placeholder that will be a text of inside the input, which will be a suggestion what kind of an input can be potentially in for the end user. And we set a value, and that will be a new habit. Now that is interesting because whatever accepts this input as a value will be inside of new habit. Now that's it. We'll use onChange. This is also event handler, and we will start a function which accepts e. It's a short for the event, and we will use. So let me explain. Let me finish that, and I'll explain. New habit, and give me a second. We'll use that event .target.value. That's how we get target.target.value. That's how we get the value. So what is happening on onChange? Whatever we do, by the way, that's our input. Whatever we change inside, we basically, when something is happening on onChange, it will accept a function which accepts by default. This is the function. This is, by the way, a short way of writing arrow function. It accepts an event and it returns another function which is setting a value for the new habit over here. As you remember, this is the function to setting. So it runs and it accepts another value, which is basically inside the event. Underneath we have another inside the event we have a target, and inside target we have actual value, which is like text from here. So it's that's how it's structured. And let's just add another style. Again, as I said, inline styling is not the best thing to do, but we will use it here just for the simplicity, not to overwhelm. Marching right, let's do it like 10 pixel. So we're setting padding and margin and maybe font size. Let's do it maybe 16 pixel. Save it. Now we have some styling, and let's, under the input, let's set a button. A button is another HTML element, which is not part of the React or JavaScript. So in here, we will use two tags, beginning and closing tag. And in the center, let's write add habit. So that way we have this button, and let's do on click. There we had on change because that was input. And here we have on click because it's a button. That's how it somehow different, but it's all of them are event handlers. And we will add habit. So whenever we click, it will run at habit function. And we want to find what it is at habit. It's over here. And if you, as you see, we are adding value of the function right here, but we're not calling it. If we do it like this, it will, whenever it will be reading a code of React and JavaScript, it will actually just initiate, invoke, and call that function right away. But what we want to do, we just want to pass here our function at habit, so it knows whenever the user clicks, not when it's reading a file, but when the user clicks on the button, it will refer to this function and then it will invoke that function. And then the logic will start basically trimming that value of new habit and setting it as a streak. You will see that in a moment. Let's bear with me. I don't want to be way too boring. So we added onClick handler. Let's do some styling. We always start with a curly braces, and for the style specifically, we're adding an object. That's why it's couple curly braces, but it's only for the style because we actually sending to the style an object. And in here, let's add some padding, which will be a value of string 10 pixel, and we can actually send for the padding both, so it's like up and down, left and right. If it's two values, if you know from the CSS, and maybe just do the same as we did before. Let's add some font size, which will be 16 pixels as we did before. Save it after formats because I have Prettier installed. You can install Prettier if you want. Just go to the extensions in your VS Code. If you want, go to extensions and just look for the Prettier. It's a good way just to after format whatever you want, and it's pretty standard and popular even at my work in many places I worked before. So okay, we've done with the button. We have a button closing div, and let's do some lists. Lists are always divided. I mean, there are two types of lists: ordered and unordered list. So this is unordered list, and inside that unordered list we will start with the curly braces. Curly braces inside GS6 means we are using some JavaScript, because as you can see, this is pretty much HTML, but if we want to use some of the JavaScript, as over here, this is a JavaScript part, this is the JavaScript value. In here, in between UL and UL, unordered list, we will starting the JavaScript logic. So inside here, this is pure JavaScript. We will use habits, which is, if you remember, habits was our array, basically list of our habits, which is right now array, but it's empty. We'll use habits, and on that habits we will use map. Map is a very popular function, which is basically what it does. It loops over the habits and basically remapping whatever we do for the logic. We will do this way. We will say, hey, you get every habit inside that habits map. So we have habits, we have many habits inside the habits array. We'll take habit. We can also provide index and use that index, and we will use that here. So this is, as you can see by syntax, we initiating as before. This is function. It accepts events and returns something, some another logic. Here as well, we're starting the function, accepts two arguments, and we returning some kind of logic. What we'll do in that function, which is map. This is all map inside. Oops, it's over here. What we will return. So for the GSX, for the multi-line, we will use again braces, regular. I just hit enter. If you didn't saw that, which I'm just starting braces, hitting enter, and we will return for the logic of the map is there's many habits inside. We will get for every habit with like index inside of that habit, like index 0, index 1, and etc. It's basically enumeration for every habit inside. We will do for every habit we will need to return. It means like if there's like a 10 habits, we will return 10 things individual for each. If it's like 5 habits inside, we'll return 5 things of this, whatever we will do right now. And we will return, since we are in unordered list, we will return list item. List item is another part of the HTML element, part of the unordered lists. So we'll return for each habit, there'll be a list to list that. We'll provide key and we'll provide index. So key is kind of like a needed thing and should be unique for each of item. So for the style, we'll just do again inline styling, not the best way, but margin bottom maybe 10 pixels and maybe a font size of 18 pixels. Oops, something is broke. Yes, because we didn't return enough and I just saved it. And inside of this list item, we will take, if you remember, you see it's like grayed out, not used. We'll take habit.name, and as you can see, I'm using again curly braces because it's again a logic. So here we started the logic of the JavaScript, and inside we started with the JSX again, which is HTML basically. And again, we completed with a style, we close that tag. So now this is JSX. Inside G6, if we want to use again JavaScript, then we need to start curly braces as well again, which I did. So we will return inside the habit, we have a name for each of the habit, and that will be a name, and the string value. This is basically just text. This is pure HTML text. And here we're doing again JavaScript curly braces habit.string. I think you already can see that basically what we do is we're returning every habit name. We'll say, hey, for your habit name, we're returning habit string. I would say it's somewhat easy to understand, but the code itself could be very overwhelming. So stay with me before I solve this one. This is just a bug, and we just wanted to see what it says on line 33. Have habit.name. Right. Did you want to use? Right. So that's another thing of the JavaScript. The reason it's complaining because we are outside. So every time we do return, it should be within one, let's say tag, HTML tag, JS6 component, and here we have div, and we have div on this level, on return level, and UL, so it's 2. We always should return just 1, so that's a mistake I made. So we'll just basically cut and put it inside the div. So everything should be within one component, just like basically a rule of the React and the way return function works. It only accepts only one argument, which is right now div, and if I save it, voila, you can see our habit tracker looks better. So here we added an input field to type in habits, a button to add the item, and a list of dynamically updates with each new habit. Yeah, let's test it out by typing a habit and just click add habit, right? Let's go with shower. I don't know, is it a good habit? Like, yeah. Let's do breakfast and coffee. Okay. For now, string is 0. Let's do one more coffee. Yeah, for now, the logic is pretty, it works, but it's not finished yet. And we'll just finish what we were doing. So what is missing adding string counter, right? Because now it's just like keep adding without the string counter itself. But we have a halfway there. So yeah, let's make our app interactive by adding string counters for each of the habit. And what we will do, we'll just come back. This is our return statement, by the way. You can do collapsing in case you want to do that. We'll just scroll up just right before return statement, and after the add habit function, we will just add another function for incrementing this string. Start with a const. It's called increment string, which will take index. That's another function, takes index and returns curly braces const updated habits. Let's call it like this. It will be array. This is a spread operator. We're basically spreading a previous habits, which was also an array. That's one of the technique. Spread operator, just disperse the array, and every habit which was there will be in the new array right now. Updated habits, we will use that new array, which we just created over here. We will access element inside that array at index, which we got from this function. And bear with me. And we will access a specific object inside it. Key, which is string, and that string will be updated plus with the 1. It basically means same as we do dot string. Let's do it next line, almost same as basically same line, but instead of this we'll do something like string plus 1. So instead of doing this is a shortcut. The shortcut of we'll basically do probably this whole line over here, something like this. As you can see, it saves a lot of just code overall. And at the end of, we will use set habits, our function. If you remember, we were setting up over here for updating our habits. So our set habit will be updating our habits. Could be confusing, I know. Stay with me. Let's finish our project, our feature. So we've done with this feature. Let's look over how we can place it in our structure. So we have this unordered list, we have this input, we have this button, and inside of li element, probably we want to place it somewhere here. We will do something like have this habit name string. Okay, and we have input. Okay, probably habit.name string. That's inside li. Right after that, string line, let's add another button. Same HTML, and let's call it +1 string. So we'll be adding another string inside. And let's inside that button add arguments on click, which is event handler. If you remember, we used that before. Open curly braces, takes function. This is the way to write arrow function, and it accepts nothing before we use events or like indexes or anything else. We don't need that. We just need to run our function, which will be increment streak, which we wrote before. It will be accepting an index. The index we got from here. If you remember, we started like with a habit, with the index, then we passed index over here, and we also, since it's still within that of part of habits.map, so we're still inside that map function method we are using. On the click on the button, which will be incrementing a streak, we'll pass that index from here to here, so it knows to which index we're clicking actually. And hopefully that should work. And where's that curly braces coming? Okay, we're still inside on click. Add one more. For the on click, we're done. Let's add style. Again, inline styling, not recommended, but for the sake of the simplicity, let's use it here. 10 pixels, do some padding, I don't know, 5 and 10, 5 and 10 pixels. So it's a 5 for top and bottom and 10 pixels for the left and right. That's also a shortcut. Usually you would do something like this, but it's just like basically shortcut because we're providing for the top and the bottom. Saving. And I think we're seeing something over here. So far, let's see if we didn't miss anything else. So what is happening? Now you can see, now you can actually increase a streak for each of the habit by clicking +1 streak. The button next to it, this makes tracking habits more fun and interactive. Let's say I did a lot of coffee this morning. Oh, we had some errors. That's not a good one. Let's figure out. Okay. Something is wrong over here. Okay, I think maybe I found the issue. So if we go back to the add habit logic, we have habits, have a new habit, and streak should be a 0. Then after that, a new habit, we'll set new habits as one thing, and we'll do set new habit on the new line with an empty string. That will clear the input field. Clear the input field. Let's leave a comment for ourselves. And this one will do initialize streak to 0. Let's save that. Let's refresh. Let's call it like coffee, breakfast. Okay, we have streak 1. Let's update. Voila, it's working. Just to recap, what we just encountered some little bug, and the issue was here in the logic of the add habit. So what we changed here, and I suggest you change there as well, in the logic of the if statement, we were setting up set new habits. So we return the habits, so that remains the same. Inside this object, we setting up a streak to the 0. So that's our like initializing streak to 0 to the very beginning. On the next line, next to the set habits, but still within inside this if statement, we will do a set habit to the empty string. So that will clear the input field after we enter the habit. So that actually resolves the problem. Okay, to recap, let's go back to styling. We just didn't finish one last thing. Still a little bit more styling. We don't need the console log here. Nearby, let's create a new file. Let's call it just at the same level as app.js. Just create new file. It's called styles.css, pretty much standard name of the file. And I'll just copy the whole styling inside just to save the time. Basically what we will do, we will update the body to margin 0, padding 0, font family, background color, some buttons and hover. And if you save that, we'll refresh it here. It basically refreshes automatically. Just a little of improvement. And let's call it breakfast. We don't have it on enter. We have to actually click on each button. Just a little of the styling, but yeah, now it still works. Took a lot of breakfast, exercise. That's it. We're actually done. And there you have it. Your very own habit tracker built with ReactJS. We covered state management, event handling, dynamic rendering, all while building something useful. Keep experimenting and adding features like editing habits or resetting of streaks, or you can add something when we add a new exercise or habit here. I cannot do it like a by enter, you can do it on your own. Let me know in the comments what you added to your version, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more coding tutorials. Let's do a quick review of what we added here. Just quick recap. I think I promised it. So overall, you have this import, you have a structure of your function, which is a whole component, and export. That's a high level of the structure. So for the simplicity, we can do something like this. We can collapse everything so it doesn't look overwhelming. I think this way it looks very simple. So on a high level, it looks like this. Import your own function, which is component itself, and it's exporting of the function. That's the high level logic. Let's expand it a bit. Now we have two states: setting many habits, so a bulk way, and setting a new habit one by one. So that's actual value, and that's a function to update that value. It's useState. It's a hook for managing the state within your component by React. We're setting initial value of empty array, and here empty string. That's for this line. Next, we have add habit, which is function, which is checks for the condition if a new habit is not an empty string, which we'll be using there when we're adding. We use this set habits function, which basically use previous habits, dispose it here with the spread operator, each of the habit, and then sets it in the structure of the object, which is for the name, we add a new habit, the string value by this function, and we add a streak, which will be 0. And the next line, set new habit, empty line, it just clears out this input value field. Let's close that one, collapse it. Increment streak. This is basically incrementing the streak on the right. Takes index as a function. Use updated habits, which is basically just variable only available inside of this function here. Disperse spreads all the habits inside another array. And what do? We access each of the habit by this index and increment this index to 1, which is basically adding to the previous one. If it was right now it's 7, now it's 8, now it's 9. That's exactly this logic. And at the end of, we have this updated habits constant. We just have that number. We use set habits to update the streak value. We don't mess with the previous values. We just update only streak value inside. That's what it does. And the return statement, basically JSX, HTML elements with JavaScript logic. So let's do it also incrementing one by one, opening one by one. So we have div, should be one component inside the return. We cannot do two components at the same time. Just adding some styling. Inside that styling, we have h1, habit tracker, we have input field. So over here, right in the middle, we have button for the add habit. We have list, unordered list over here, which is updating. For the input, we're providing value of the new habit. We have on change, we have styling for the button of the add habit. Of course, we have a logic of add habit, which is this one, some styling and some text. And we have a list to showcase, which is a little bit of logic, but it's not that so scary. We just use our habits array. Remember all the habits inside. We will map it. We'll take each habit and each of its own index of its habit. First index, second index, they are all indexed. We will return in these lines, we will return li. We'll style a bit, but this li, this one li is just every item with its own index. Inside we will return the name, for example coffee, and this text, which is just text streak, and the value of that habit streak, which is 9. Nearby we will just place another button, this one. On click we will use increment streak logic, this one. We will style a bit and write the text, add streak. I mean, if you look at that way, it looks a little more simpler, and I hope it's a little more understandable and clear, because I promised to give you a really easy way to learn ReactJS through the practice, through the project. I think that way you learn more, because you will actually build something and then you can break it down to the pieces and just enjoy breaking down and exploring more, rather than just building some random stuff and cannot like join them in one. Now you have a little app, very simple, sort of like a to-do list, but it's functional, it's working. You can use that and you can experiment even more. Let me know in the comments. In case you have questions, In case you face something like a syntax error or any error along the way with the tutorial, just let me know. I will respond to you in the comments, or maybe someone else will respond to you for sure. But I will try to help you with that. Yeah, just stay tuned and ask your questions. Thank you. Bye.